Okay, everyone, I'm just going to, we're going to jump into the drawing here. I'm just going to talk about where you're going. So we started off with this, right? This was like your concept sketch. So this is mine, okay, simple cabin, and or a simple shed, whatever you want to call it, with a window and a door. Overall dimensions. So that's the first thing that you handed in. After you handed that in, then I started talking about how to build walls, okay, and that's this drawing here. So how to build walls, I talked about the concept of a stud being located every 16 inches. And more important, I talked about exactly what that means. So if I scroll in here, if you recall, these are the dimensions I covered, okay? So from the center of one stud to the center of the next is 1'4", which is 16 inches, okay? And that's the same thing as from the edge of one stud to the edge of the next stud, also 16. The only hiccup here, the only difference is that very first stud along the line is 16 inches or 1'4". It's from the end of the wall to the center of that first stud. Okay, it's not from the center of that end stud. So notice the difference here. Notice the difference between this 1'4" and this 1'4". Okay, and the result is you've got 1'3¼ from the end of the wall to the edge of the first stud, and that's really critical, okay? And we always mark the edge of the stud so that you can see the line when you nail the thing, okay? All right, so that's the second thing we talked about. The first was a concept sketch. Second was just the idea of a frame stud wall, okay, or a wall frame with studs at 16 inches on center with a bottom plate at the bottom and a top plate at the top. After that, we talked about this. We talked about how to put, we talked about why 16 inches, and how, there's the fact that the plywood or drywall is all sized to fit onto a 16-inch stud wall. So a sheet of drywall or plywood is always 4 feet wide, 48 inches, and that is divisible by 16. And so these two sheets, when you put these two sheets up, for example, this is what I explained before, those two sheets are seamed over a common stud. And I'll zip out back here. Okay, see the common stud. So we don't have to put two studs there to carry the two edges, just one stud. Next, okay, let's move on here. So now you should be drawing your walls. And in drawing your walls, let's go have a look here. So this is a completed frame for my 4 walls on my shed. Okay, I've drawn this, and I'm just going to zoom in here, and I'm going to point out a few things. So you should already know how to draw a wall. And I also did a video on how to draw a wall with a window. So I showed you how to do the window here. Okay, so let's begin there. And just to review here, let's go in and have a closer look at this. So let me zoom in here. And first of all, the names of the parts. You've got the stud on the outside here. This is called a king stud. A king stud is the same length as all the other studs. Goes right up to the top plate. Underneath here, underneath the header, is this thing called a trimmer stud. And that trimmer stud is what supports the header over the opening. Okay, so we've got a trimmer stud, and a king stud here. And then underneath the window, you've got small studs. See the small studs under the window here and here. And as a matter of fact, you got one here, 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 and here. There's 5 underneath this window. Okay. So there has to be one under the 2 ends, so that takes care of 1 and 2. They have to be under the 2 ends of this thing called a sill. And then you've got these 3. And how do you figure out where do these 3 go? Well, those 3 are in line with all the other studs in the wall for 16 inches on center. Okay, so let me pull my tape measure here, and let me just go from, I'm going to go from the edge of this stud here, okay, over to the edge of this stud here, which is 1'4", and then from that stud, I'm going to go over this way, and that is also 1'4", and so on, and so on, and so on, okay? So those, it looks like these little studs under the window, it looks like they're kind of just randomly placed, but they're not randomly placed, okay? They are 16 inches on center. Okay, now, so that takes care of the window, and then let's go around to the door here. A door is framed exactly the same way. You see how the door is framed? So the door is framed exactly the same way, except there's no sill across here, and there's no little cripple studs underneath that sill. You just have the header, the two trimmers, and the king studs on the outside. Okay? And then the studs in the wall, you notice, for example, let's zoom in here. You notice that on the left side of this opening, there's one king stud. On the right side, it looks like there's two king studs. There kind of is, but there's actually one king stud, and the other stud here just happens to fall on the 16-inch center. It just worked out that way. Okay? All right, so that covers window opening and door opening. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what the header's all about. So the header, okay, let's take apart this header, because this header is actually made in 3 pieces. Okay, so it's like a sandwich. These headers act like beams. They are beams. Okay, they're beams over top of an opening, and so they're going to carry a load from above. And as a result of that, let's go look at the window one. As a result of that, it has to be strong. So how are you going to make it strong? You put 2 pieces of wood. So look at this. You put the 2 on the outside, like there and there. Oops. Let me see. I don't think that one's grouped. 1, 2, 3. Make a group. And I'll pull that out. Okay. So look at what we got here. We have 2 pieces on either side, and those are 1.5 inches thick. So in this case, it's a 2 by 12, which is overkill, which is a little bit too strong for this, but that's okay. I'm going to explain that in a second. So you've got 2 pieces here, and then separating them, because we're making a sandwich, is just a little piece of 1/2 inch material. Okay, so this is just 1/2 inch. The only reason that 1/2 inch is in there is to create the sandwich, so that by the time you add up, let's go here, by the time you add up the thicknesses of those things, because this is 1.5 inches thick and this is 1.5 inches thick, that makes 3 inches. Okay, but as you know, as we've talked about, the width of this wall, or the width of a 2x4 is 3.5. So this is 1.5 inches plus another 1.5 inches equals 3, and we're short by 1/2 inch, and so that's why you put this third piece in there. That's why you put the third piece in there. You see that? And so that by the time you add up those 3 thicknesses, you get 3.5. So let me put this back together. I put that one in, and I put this one in. Okay, now let's have a look from underneath. So from underneath, I'm going to zoom in here and look. Okay, everyone look. This is very, very important. There's your 3.5 inches. Let me grab a tape measure. Okay, so watch this. A 2x4 is 3.5 inches, right? This is what I'm just talking about, 3.5 inches. This is 1.5 inches, okay, plus a 1/2 inch on the inside, and then plus another 1.5 inches. There we go. So that makes, what does that make? That makes 1.5 inches plus 1/2 is 2, plus 1.5 inches is 3.5. And so that's how we get the thickness. Maybe I didn't make that a group. There we go. Okay, so hope that makes sense. So I've talked about how a window opening is put together with the trimmer studs and the king studs. And then I talked about the door opening. Now I've just talked about the header, so how a header goes together. It's like a sandwich, right? Okay, think of it, you're going to a deli for lunch. You want a sandwich, so that's what that is. Now the last couple things I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about putting these walls together. This is really, really crucial here. Watch this. Okay, as you know, this piece here is called a top plate. So those are top plates for walls. Okay, we covered that already. I mentioned that there are actually 2 top plates that get put on walls. So this top one is called a double top plate. Okay, and you already have that in your diagram. So you've got a top plate here, and you've got a double top plate on top. Now look at the way that these are configured. Have a very close look at this corner. It's like a log cabin. Okay, see how this is all locked together. So I'm going to lift up one of these plates. Okay, let me get the move tool. I'm going to lift up this plate here. I have to highlight it. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to lift that straight up. Wrong tool. There we go. Okay, there it is. So look at this. See how that's put together? So the first wall, remember the long wall comes through. So this long wall comes through, and then the short wall butts into it like this. And then to help lock these walls together, you run the double top plate across both walls. You see that? I'm going to lift up the other one too. Okay, so watch this. I'm going to lift this one here. And there we go. Okay. Now, let's have a look here. So you see that? I'm going to raise that up a little bit higher. This is a little bit confusing here. There. Okay. So you see how that's put together? So the long wall comes through, the short wall butts into it, and then these go in place like that and like that, okay? And lock it all together. And that happens at every corner, okay? Every corner, you have this sort of, I call it a log cabin effect, where you're lapping the pieces over top of each other, okay? And what that does is it ties the building together. It locks all the walls together. So see there, and then the fourth corner is exactly the same, which is right there, like that. Okay. And then lastly, there's this thing called blocking. Okay, so see the horizontal pieces here. Okay, this just helps to keep the studs nice and straight so they don't warp up. Makes the walls a little bit stronger. And you see what happens is, what you do is you take a tape measure and you measure the length of your stud from bottom to top. Okay, and so you take that dimension and you divide it by 2, and then you take your tape, and then you take your tape measure, and this time you put a line. Now watch where I put the line. Okay, I'm going to come in here. Watch where I put the line. I'm going to put the line right down there, so that see where that line is? Okay, let me zoom right in here. So see that line? That's the line I just made. That's halfway up the stud, and then you put in your blocks. Your blocking. Your blocking is 2x4s as well, and your blocking just goes in between each stud. One piece goes below, one piece goes above, and so on and so on. Let me just reposition. See that? One below, one above, one below, one above, one below the line, one above the line, and so on. Okay? Why do they do it like that? It just makes the installation easier, because if you alternate like this, one up, one down, then you can get, let me grab a circle here, you can get a nail. Okay? You can nail through the end here like that and like that. Okay? From both sides. Okay, that's a strange looking nail, but anyway, you can nail from the end there, and you can nail from the other end as well. Okay, so that's why they do that. Let me get rid of those nails. Okay, folks, I think that's about it. So just make sure you understand those concepts, how a window goes together, how a door goes together, trimmers, kings, cripple studs, sill, and what a header's made of. It's made of 3 pieces, and in this case, it's made of 3 pieces. And then the top plate, the double top plate, the blocking, and the final point I want to make before I go is these headers. I said this is overkill. I'm putting big headers in here, very wide headers, okay, just for simplicity's sake for your drawing. A lot of headers look like this. Watch, I'm going to switch tabs here. A lot of headers look like this, where you have the header and then little cripple studs above, even above the header. So see the cripple stud below the window? You've also got them above here. This is getting, I don't know if that might be a little bit too much for you. So that's why I just put big headers in here, make it nice and simple. Okay, and it's very, very strong. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much.